finally
the knowledge
got
that I'm
round to
leaving
Jane
it
Austen
behind for someone else.
and went out of my mind over Pride
I
and
shall sprinkle
Prejudice,
pale
which I
pencil
can't
marks
bring
through it,
myself to
pointing
take
out
back
the
to the
best
library till you
passages
find a
some
copy of my own.
yet unborn.
Regards to
Thank you
Nora
all.
and the Wade
Happy
slaves.
New Year.
HH.
And because of this, word spread, and every baker in all the towns and in all the colonies began to do the same thing. And since then, a baker's dozen is 13, a practice that is followed to this day. And Saint Nicholas is none other than Santa Claus, Father Christmas, or Sinterklaas, as they know him in Dutch.
Hi, my name is Deeptha Vivekanand, and I am a storyteller and an educator. I live in Chandigarh, which is in the north of India, but my roots are all in the south of India. I was born and raised in Madras, which is in the state of Tamil Nadu. And then I lived for many years in Bangalore, which is the capital of the southern state of Karnataka. And now I live in Chandigarh, which is part of the Punjab.
What would it take to make lessons come alive for the learner, to make learning an emotional investment for the student rather than just a financial investment for the parents? Deeptha Vivekanand, a corporate trainer turned professional storyteller, decided to take the issue by the horns, as it were. She began to explore the possibilities that a story based learning environment could offer in a classroom and to understand the neuroscience behind how stories work to illustrate a point, how stories help to convey abstract concepts in subjects like mathematics and science, and how they can work to establish the interconnectedness of subjects like nothing else. She is now working to design and develop and deliver highly researched and customized story based content and programs to enrich the learning process. An amazing conversation with a brilliant lady. Do have a listen. Hello, guys. Welcome to the podcast Theatre of Joy. Today we have Deeptha Vivekanand. She is a storyteller. Can you imagine? She's amazing. She performs stories and she also now is working in a school using stories as a pedagogical tool. And we'll hear more about it from her. And I'm so excited, so looking forward to the conversation. So, Deeptha, please tell us about yourself a little bit.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you. And hello. So I am a professional storyteller and an educator. But my career really began in corporate learning and development, where I was working with IT companies where I was doing communication and behavioral skills training. So storytelling happened as a transition from there. So I pretty much stumbled upon storytelling, when I was looking for ways to engage my classes, my students and my participants better. So storytelling happened to just sort of land in my lap.
And storytelling is not only for kids.
No, of course not.
Yes.
Of course not. So I started with storytelling in an adults classroom setting. So then from there, I jumped into storytelling full time in 2008-9, around that time, and been going strong since then. So right now I do storytelling full time. I am part of a school where we work to integrate storytelling in the curriculum. So I work with teachers and with students, of course, trying to find ways in which stories can be infused into lessons that can be made more joyful. Yeah.
The kids do read stories as part of their curriculum, but this is different. I mean, this is fun.
Yeah.
Better, nicer way of
Yeah.
Giving them what stories can give them.
Absolutely. It's so the big difference is that you don't just stop with telling a story for the sake of entertainment. Of course, it's wonderful to listen to a
And
story.
at the end of a story in a textbook, you had 4 questions.
Yeah. Oh well, I can tell you that it's not so drab anymore.
I know, which are used differently by different teachers.
Yeah. But right now, so my focus is to use stories not just as part of the language teaching where there is a direct fit, but to also try and bring it into science, into maths, into social sciences.
I've
and
done
try-
theatre,
Yeah.
use of theatre in geography. And
Yeah, absolutely.
it's so possible.
It is.
You must be having so much fun.
I do, because there's just so much I have to read and research and equip myself with as much knowledge and tools as I can, because I have to pass it on to the teachers who are eventually interfacing with the students. So there's a lot of homework that needs to be done. So the interesting and the enjoyable part is telling the story, really, because that's where you see that instant response from the kids.
So let me get this right.
Yeah.
You create the curriculum or the pedagogy,
Yeah.
and then the teachers go and tell the stories in the classroom.
Yeah, so I train the teachers to take it to the classroom.
Wonderful.
It's not as if I don't tell stories to children. It's just
Sustainable
that
then,
because
right?
they go every day to classroom. It's not possible for me to be there on a daily basis, right? So that's the format. So essentially, looking at stories as a teaching, learning tool wherever possible. So that's what I like it.
I wish there were more of you.
I
Let's
wish
photocopy
so.
you and
Yes,
because it is courageous to venture out and try yourself out and try stories out, or look at pedagogy in a different way and actually go and practice it.
I think a lot of that also comes from wanting to teach in a way I would have liked to have been taught
Yes.
when I was in school. I think there's a little bit of angst.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Oh, how I wish someone taught me math through this story, because there is a lot of content available today. So now I'm learning more math concepts through stories. I seem to understand it better myself. So that's why I keep thinking how I wish it could have been possible then, because it's not as if storytelling in teaching learning is new. In fact, it is one of the oldest ways of communicating anything. You would know that. But I think somewhere along the line we sort of gave into rote learning and just memorizing
or teaching to the
sort of just take the fun out of the learning process, because
there's an exam, and the teacher
Yeah.
has to show the powers that be, that the child is doing good, so and that ties up the whole system.
So now the good thing is that the NCF and the NEP and all of these documents that have been released now put a lot of emphasis on storytelling and theatre in education. So I'm really glad to see policy documents giving these things importance.
They have been for a while,
Yeah.
but the problem is there aren't enough people like you, enough facilitators, and
Because it is a full-time job. There are a lot of storytellers for sure, and in fact in the last 10-15 years that I've been doing storytelling, I've seen how much the scene has really exploded, which is a great thing. But I think we need more storytelling practitioners to take up education as part of their focus area, and build resources and train teachers and offer that constant hand-holding, because it's not a one-off thing. You can't go into a school, do a workshop, and then hope for it to be carried forward in the way that you want it to be. And I think also therefore schools must also be looking at this as a role now, as a specialist role, that they can find people to come and take over. So it's both ways, right? There needs to be a demand and a supply. So,
my dream school would have a nice well-equipped resource center.
Yeah.
Which would also have run trainings
Yes.
and actually have the resources and
Yes.
both audio and visual.
Yes, absolutely. God. yeah, yeah.
And so that is the teachers can be supported just to give them a thing ki jao class mein story sunao.
No, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. And teachers also. So I've been in this one school that I've been associated with for about 7 years now.
Same Kabir?
Yeah.
Really?
And so in the 7 years, it hasn't. What can I say? It's taken off, but to keep it sustained and to keep it rigorous has been an issue because of various things that happen in a school, and this is true for every other school as well. Because a teacher is not just teaching. She has so many other things to do, so many other tasks, and then there's exams that come in. So to really sort of explore the length and breadth of storytelling in education is a challenge. Is a challenge.
Yeah, but pioneers kind of, I can see, like going into the future, I can see whatever you're doing actually tabulated and put in, some kind of a way that can be generally used then.
Yeah, that's the long-term goal, to kind of document it all and put it out in the form of a book, because that's again a huge area of
or anything, book or anything that teachers can use. Yeah.
Anything.
It's a huge
right?
area.
Yeah. It's a huge area where we don't have enough resources because that are Indian context specific. So a lot of the times when I'm looking up research, content, a lot of it is Western references. In fact, books written by storytellers and story educators in the US, in UK, those are really the books that we look at and take lessons from. So something that's catered to the Indian market, to the lessons in, let's say, a CBSE textbook, is where there's a lot of potential there, and practitioners must really look at this more seriously.
And actually, there's a lot more also.
Yeah.
What would a woke storyteller be like? I was a little, when they started looking at Enid Blyton's stories and finding the sexist and the other references. So I think a storyteller would, but I mean, different storytellers would have different things they want to watch out for.
I think every kind of story has to be told.
Yeah.
And if you're telling, let's say, fairy tales, for example, yes, one could argue that they don't have currency in the modern world today. But I think if we didn't have that, we won't know what we need to have. So it's important to give the old version and also a new version of that story. And I think that's where you encourage children to retell old narratives. And that's the thing about stories, that's the thing about folklore, that it opens itself up for interpretation and reinterpretation with every telling, right? So,
and also, we've seen in workshops that when children are allowed to evolve their own stories about some incident and make that into a that is a lot of learning also.
Because the human brain is wired to process information in the form of stories, right? There's a lot of neuroscience research now to back this, which is a great thing. So we know that the brain responds to stories much more, like a lot of the cortexes in the brain light up when they respond to a story or when they're in a storytelling experience, as opposed to just plain facts and boring data. But again, the balance is also required. You can't go all emotional and ignore the data,
which is your job.
Which is because the subject has to be taught, right?
Yes.
The rigor has to be maintained. The definitions and whatever else have to come with it. But that's really where the challenge is. How much story? How much concept? So there are interesting frameworks to help us navigate that. So one project that I'm currently involved in is creating or teaching stories through, teaching science through stories.
I want to be in your classroom.
And specifically, stories of scientists, where we've seen that bringing in biographies into the science classroom is such a powerful way of humanizing the content and the subject. So that's a project I'm currently involved in, which is very, very interesting because of, again, the amount of reading and research you have to do to really distill the story from all of that information that's there, and then present it in a form that children would like to,
Yeah, I mean, as a pedagogical tool, I guess the person who is doing the research or actually creating the pedagogy has to have a lot of connection points.
Yes.
You know,
Yes,
and has to
absolutely.
have, of course, but to understand education and that,
Yeah.
and also storytelling, and
Yeah.
also for whatever subject you tackle.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I mean, of course, woke is a bit stepping. We know what that has done to the world.
Yeah.
But still, like, I don't know, I would tell stories differently than, say, my Bua used to tell me.
Yeah.
There were always the women were only to be married and
Yeah.
the prince,
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
I mean, that's just one thing.
Yeah.
But lots of other things also.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have
So
to be quite sensitive to the way society is evolving, changing.
Absolutely. But I think it's important for storytellers to know that, folk tales, or the older the story is, it's going to perpetrate a certain kind of a stereotype. Having said that, there are a lot of old stories where, let's say, for example, women are heroes. They are doing unconventional things. They are aggressive and loud and brash and whatever else that you may not see in a Disney version of a fairy tale, for example, right? The stories are there. I think it's up to us to really dig them out and present them to newer audiences every chance we get. So while I might tell a story of a Cinderella, I would also like to talk to my listeners about a story of Bopalucci, who is actually a folktale from Punjab, about this girl who, she doesn't think twice to kill the person who's coming to kidnap her, and sets herself free. And then this is an old story, right? So she's not this damsel in distress and she's waiting for her Prince Charming to come and, take her away on a horse. She takes matters into her own hands. So I think it's important for us to present both stories and then let the listener, whether it's a school classroom or whether it's a group of adults or a corporate classroom, let them decide.
Also to lead discussions and make the space for talking about stuff.
Absolutely. So,
but tell us about your the science experience of yours using science.
So it's something that's been practiced in the country and in other parts of the world as well, using stories from, let's say, folklore or real stories, like I mentioned, stories of scientists, and to bring them into the modern classroom to create a better connection and engagement with the concept, because science is generally taught as a set of facts.
It's taught as history.
Yeah. So and that just sucks the whole fun out of learning something like science, which is really all around you. So
and it's a process. It's not history.
So the goal again for in the NCF is to look at ways in which we can promote scientific temper amongst young people, which is sadly lacking in the country today. I think the more progressive we seem to become, the more backward we also go. So young people need to know what it means to think scientifically, and there's a process that every scientist has followed to get to a theory or a discovery, and so to unpack that process
And
and
pack it into a story.
yeah, and to let children also experience that process for themselves. Like, think like a scientist. Do what you might do if you were a scientist. Ask the kind of questions that you might ask if you were the scientist. You know, to really live the story.
And
in a
ask
sense.
questions and not take things
Absolutely.
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 That's what is lacking.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. So this is what the whole Teaching Science Through Stories project is about. And there's a group of us who are working on it. And the brainchild, this is a project of Dr. Neerja Raghavan. It's her brainchild, really. So she's an educator based in Bangalore, very senior science educator. So working with her on this, and it's a passion project, really. It's we're just doing this because we like stories, and we believe that stories have a huge role in teaching and learning. So there's a group of us who are working on this project. Yeah. So
And like, of course, so corporate also there's a learning and development aspect.
Yeah.
School also there's a pedagogical
sure.
and learning and development. But supposing, what would you dream about if actually cafes and social places where the community gathers, not as a community also, just people, their interest leading them.
yeah.
So what would be the ultimate?
Oh, I would love to have this huge community of people here in Chandigarh who just gang up to listen to stories,
And how would that evolve and flow? I mean, I just
So this we
picking your brain.
I know you've been in Bangalore. You've been a part of the early days of when the Bangalore Storytelling Society was set up and all of that. It just started as a conversation between two people who said, let's get storytellers together because we know there's quite a few of us in the city, and it was important to create a space where we could just learn from each other, talk to each other, just be.
Enjoy a story.
Yeah. So that's how it started, and now that community in Bangalore is huge. And so when I moved to Chandigarh, I had similar dreams of doing creating a community, which we did to a fair degree of success. So and the group still exists. It's called Folks and Tales.
Yeah.
So we ran it out of a cafe in Sector 7, where once a month we would meet to just have everyone tell stories to a very loving audience.
Yeah, I mean, we do see teleserials and films, and there's stories in one way or the other. Like what Hollywood has done with the Cinderella thing. But it's so nicer when it's people to people, actually that energy, when you're sitting together as a community, even if it's 7 or 8 people, and just enjoying life in its different aspects. That's what storytelling is about.
That's what it is, and if you trace the roots of storytelling, that's really how it evolved. It was a way of keeping people together. It was a way of keeping the community strong, and as a way of communicating knowledge and philosophy or whatever experience. So if you have to go back all the way to Africa, imagine a time when the storyteller is sitting in front of everybody
after a hunt,
and there's a little fire burning, and people have finished their work for the day, and they're all just waiting to find out what happened, how did this hunt go, and there you have your storyteller sort of telling you all the details about how he hid and where the animal came from and how he fired his arrow. So it was also a way of passing on information to the young people who were listening and preparing to be hunters, so there was just so much going on around that one story that was told, and I suppose, a day would be incomplete if there was no story. storytellers were revered people, therefore. So,
I mean, in our villages, still there are community spaces.
There are,
You know, the tree under which people gather, increasingly only older people, I suppose. But there also, the person who can tell us whatever, an experience like a story
Yes.
is always the most popular.
yes.
And,
Yeah, absolutely.
you know,
So it's because everyone can tell a story and everyone likes listening to stories, and I think that's the most basic requirement there is.
Yeah.
You know, the moment you say, okay, let me tell you a story, you know that you have the other person's attention.
Yeah.
It's like almost magic happens. You know, it's like the moment you say once upon a time, everybody knows that.
yes.
You know,
I
I'm going to
have
be
seen,
taken
I've
into this
seen
world.
you performing,
Right.
and there's so much to be explored there.
Yeah.
How, and you do it so beautifully, so wonderfully.
Thank you.
It's like, you know, everything is animated and you're actually performing it like a theatre piece.
Yeah.
But it's not theatre.
It's not. It's
It's,
and, yeah. In fact, you know, when I started storytelling, I had no clue that this was even an industry and that, you know, there were so many people around the world who were doing it professionally. So I just jumped into it, you know, on a whim, and because I knew, I felt like there was, you know, a calling. And that's what drew me to find my voice as a performance storyteller. I never knew that it existed within me. But there are, of course, storytelling techniques that are very specific to oral, you know, performance and oral storytelling.
Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
a person kind of every day is different, and then
Yeah.
you learn from every day,
Sure,
and then you
yeah,
put it
yeah,
in the.
yeah. You learn by
There are
watching.
no templates.
No,
really.
and each person is different. Each person's storytelling style is different. That's what makes it so vibrant and so interesting. But there are masters of storytelling, you know, in different parts of the world. I mean, just so wonderful to watch that
And now
one
it's all-
person on a big stage
Yeah.
holding an audience of, you know, maybe 1,000 or more. There's something there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now, of course, we have internet,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's easier to see
Yeah.
so many
Sure.
different forms.
Yes. So I think the simplicity of oral storytelling is what drew me to it, because it doesn't require, you know, props, and it doesn't require a very big stage or, you know, costumes and anything like that. Of course, people use it in
People use
storytelling,
costumes.
but it's not required, you know. So it just
You
needs
just
those
take
three
yourself-
things, right? The story, the storyteller, and the listener. That's all
I
you
know,
need.
that's all you need.
That's all you need.
In fact, this podcast was inspired by Peter Brook's
Right.
one quote. He says that if there's a man walking, or a person, he said person walking across a neutral space, and there's another watching, that's theatre.
Yeah,
And we are performing all the time.
absolutely. Right.
And even in our experience, some friends or some relatives or some uncles or aunts or something, just because they are better storytellers, they are more popular and they are able
Naturally,
to
yes.
hold even a family gathering.
Yeah.
Just-
Like the way family stories are told, you know, so there's usually an uncle or a grandparent who's that one person who has all the stories of the family. And I mean, I was very lucky to have grown up with my grandmothers who were great storytellers, both of them. So, I mean, I had this rich diet of stories growing up, whether it was family stories or whether it was, you know, mythology or folklore.
Wow.
So, I think that's really what kicked in when I rediscovered storytelling. So, I'm really amazed at how the whole storytelling experience can embed itself in your subconscious so strongly. And when I started, you know, rediscovering storytelling, all of that was coming back to me, you know, those, and there were such vivid experiences that I could recollect. So I think that's really how strong.
You know, I
it
think the
is.
saddest thing that has happened in our education, the way it has evolved, after the situation
Yeah.
is that the only conversations now in today's world that mothers and kids have is homework किया, teacher ने क्या कहा, तुमने कोई गलत किया होगा, or all that
Right.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There is no time for storytelling.
Mm.
Very few parents actually have the
Yeah.
and I always have noticed that a child who grows up in a family which has cousins and uncles and aunts in and out actually has more words and
Absolutely.
more experiences, more expressions. And
Yes.
a nuclear family,
Certainly.
a child growing up in a nuclear
Yeah.
family actually
Yeah.
doesn't have that
Yeah.
input.
That wide a range of
So
vocabulary.
your what you are doing
Mm.
as actually putting pedagogy and storytelling
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
is a wonderful thing, because if parents understood that this is also a very important part
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
not only homeworks and
Yeah.
school and kitne number aaye, but this is also a very important part of a child's education.
Correct. Yeah, we do get to hear from parents who think, oh, ये क्या है, क्यों इतने सारी कहानियां हैं, and all of that, which is, you have to find
खेल
ways.
खेल के आ गया बच्चा सारा दिन, पढ़ाई तो हुई नहीं. I've experienced that.
Right.
But even they must be saying about your
Yeah, so because there are all kinds of people, so you parents do have very fixed mindsets when it comes to what a
education.
school should do and should not do, which is why something like storytelling might be seen more favorably in the lower classes as opposed to the older classes, let's say grade 8, 9,
Yeah.
10, 11. So there the struggle there is still very real, and we're trying to find ways to keep that that whole storytelling in higher education piece a reality. It's going to take some time for sure, but
very exciting challenge.
Yeah. But I think the older you become, the more you need stories. So it's just such a comforting feeling. In fact, some of the students who were in grade 3, 4 when I joined the school, and who are now they're going to leave school now, they constantly come and say that we are missing those sessions.
Yeah.
We need to have more
Yeah.
stories. Why don't you tell us a story? So you feel bad that I really should be meeting them more often.
Yeah.
But the demands of the academic system
And useless.
yeah
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't get me started on this.
yeah
It doesn't help. I mean, now you can get information on a click. Why does a child have to mug up all that?
Yeah, which is why children are also not finding the need to come to school, because it's not exciting. There's nothing that's bringing them back, because the teacher, unfortunately, is no longer the master of the subject, because everything is just a Google search away, which is again why I make the case for teachers as storytellers.
Yes.
If you can communicate your concept like a story, or using the narrative techniques that work, your students are going to be eating out of your hands pretty much.
They will enjoy whatever
Yeah.
they're learning so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
I wish there were more people like you.
I wish too.
Yeah.
No, we really need a tribe of
Yeah.
story educators.
Yes.
We need a huge
That's
tribe.
wonderfully put.
Yeah.
A tribe, guys. We need a tribe of storytellers.
Yes.
Yes, especially in schools
In
and
schools.
homes.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah. True.
I guess we are out of time.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Thank you
I
so don't know how
much.
time flew. Yeah.
Yeah, I asked him to stand there and dance. Thank you so much, Deeptha. This is amazing.
Absolute pleasure.
I didn't even know he had 7 years already.
8 in Chandigarh, 7 at the
wow.
school, 8
Wow,
since we
wow,
moved.
wow.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Wonderful. We have to do it again,
Yeah,
so that we can bring in more of your actually real on the floor experiences.
absolutely. Yeah,
Wow.
love to.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you.
Thank
And
you so
keep
much.
doing the good work.